Is Easter pagan? That's what we're talking about today. Just you and me with these microphones in our faces.
And these big things on our heads.
Kelly doesn't like our headphones, but it allows her to hear this. Okay, the question is at hand. Is Easter pagan?
No.
Thank y'all for joining us today. Well, it was nice talking with you.
No, he's going to go into detail for us.
Oh, well, I mean, you're here too. Like we're a part of this. Sure. We're a part of this together. But the question is always brought up this time of year, whether it's Christmas time or Easter. There's always the question: is that pagan? I remember years ago, I had an aunt who refused to put up a Christmas tree because Christmas trees were pagan, but she still wanted to celebrate, so they did a Christmas chair. It was the throne for the king, and so they took a chair and they decorated it with Christmas decorations, which was interesting. Now that I'm older and I think about it, I'm like, well, where do you draw the line? Is it the tree or is it the garland? Is it the ornaments that you hang on it?
Very interesting. I don't want to be disrespectful to your aunt, so I'm going to just mute this.
I didn't mean to be disrespectful. I hope
no, not at all. I'm saying I don't want to be by like laughing or.
Oh, I got you.
But I think it's,
where do you draw the line?
Yeah.
And I think that for me, that's the thing that's really the question is, well, where do you draw the line? Where is the line? And why is the line even there at all? Mm-hmm. So there's kind of three things that I would give. And I want to start out today and just talk about where they're coming from to begin with. Why do we even have this question mark of is Easter pagan? And so I just want to start out with, if you look at it kind of as a whole, if you just step back and look, and you didn't hear someone, you didn't watch some short video, you didn't see an article, somebody didn't write something, if you just take a step back and look at it and say, okay, I remember being a kid and I remember Easter and I remember what we were doing. Did you ever look at that and say, hey, something's off here? Like I'm asking that. Yeah.
No. I think with Easter bunnies, as I'm getting older, I'm like, oh, I don't know. There's a weird factor to the Easter bunny. So.
Okay. And by the way, I know that normally on The Whole Truth, it's a pretty safe channel for your children, even though I have to click on YouTube, not made for kids. Yeah. But that's a YouTube thing. But anyways, you may, if you have children, we are going to talk about the Easter bunny.
Yeah.
So you just want to, you've been warned.
Yeah. Okay. I'm pretty sure though, the people that listen are on the same page as us. So yeah.
Or the people who are watching to get mad because they're like, here he goes. He's going to say Easter's not pagan.
That's true.
And so, but it's an important topic because we have so many Christian believers who are genuinely seeking to serve the Lord, and then they're bothered by something like Easter because of what I can find 3 reasons of why they look at Easter as pagan.
Yeah.
At least 3 that constantly come up. And that is the name Easter, the Easter bunny, and then eggs. Decorating eggs, hiding eggs, Easter egg hunts, all of the like. And I would say that, for me, the very first thing that I like to do in any scenario is to zoom out and look at it as a whole. And this is what we did with Halloween. And we felt very convicted of like, we don't want, if I zoom out on Halloween and I just look at it, I go, man, something's off here.
Yeah, for sure.
This isn't right.
Right.
We are dressing up like scary things, demons, ghouls, zombies, whatever, bloody things, mutilated things, going around from house to, I want Halloween to be fun, kiddie, dress up as a pirate. And I've even let my kids go trick-or-treating. We have gone trick-or-treating, and I've encouraged my kids that you don't do something scary. We don't want to do that. But then I'm walking down the road, shielding their eyes and telling them, don't look over there. Don't look at that house, And so if I just zoom out and look at it as a whole, take out the like, oh, we're missing out on something. And I just look at it, I go, something's off.
Well, for sure. But I would also add to that and say that Halloween wasn't a holiday that glorified Christ, that they have mangled and turned it into something completely different or demonic.
Yeah, absolutely.
Easter definitely is all about Christ.
Yeah. So there's an example, a lot of people would point out, like, it's Reformation. I'm talking about Halloween for a second. That Halloween is Reformation Day. And they would say, oh, well, Halloween is Reformation Day. Well, yeah, I mean, it's yes. And I'm saying this to be able to use it in the reverse later.
Right.
Yes, on October 31st, Martin Luther nailed his thesis to the door
Right.
of the church. And yes, we have the beginnings of the Protestant Reformation on October 31st. No one was ever celebrating October 31st as a Reformation Day celebration. No one was decorating pumpkins or carving pumpkins or going and getting treats because of Reformation Day.
Right.
So, and I say that to say most Christians would agree. We would go, wait a second. Yeah, no one was ever doing that.
Yeah.
Because of, like, they weren't doing trick or treating because of Reformation Day. And then somehow culture has twisted it in some way.
Right.
In the reverse, that's what I say about things like Christmas and Easter.
Mm-hmm.
Easter was not a pagan day that we tried to Christianize.
Right.
Like if we were to take Halloween and then Christianize it by calling it Reformation Day.
Right.
That's not what it is. Let's start out with just the arguments themselves, and then we'll talk through, I think it's pretty evident at this point that our stance is Easter is not pagan.
Yeah.
But let's talk through it, because I think it's fair to say, okay, well, why do Christians, I think well-intended, Christ-seeking Christians, why do they get hung up on Easter? And let's start out with the first one being the name, Easter. It has a similarity to a fertility goddess, Ishtar. So there's this goddess, this Greco-Roman goddess, Ishtar, or Babylonian. I'm sorry, Ishtar is Babylonian.
No, I've never heard anything as far as this is concerned.
Really?
So, yeah. So
okay. Well, so
and as a person who's been raised in the Christian church, I have never heard that before.
and we were raised in 90s Christian
Yeah.
homes. They were the most Christian homes.
Oh yeah. So
We
this
weren't
is
allowed,
new to me.
We weren't allowed to watch The Simpsons.
No, that was a no-go.
But Easter was allowed.
Yes, Easter was allowed.
So, but to be fair, there's this, there is a Babylonian goddess named Ishtar, ancient Babylonian goddess named Ishtar, and she was a fertility goddess. And of course, that moved its way forward through history. That goddess moved its way forward through history under other names that are like, Ashtaroth and maybe some others. I can't think of them off the top of my head, and I'm not too deep in the weeds on that. I'm just saying, for a moment, before I give any arguments, I just want to say that the name is linked. For some people, they link those two names and they say Ishtar, Easter. Do you see what you've done? You're trying to Christianize this fertility goddess, which then leads to appointing. So there's Ishtar, fertility goddess, and then you have eggs. And what do women carry? Women carry eggs. And so eggs speak of new life and eggs speak of fertility. And so there's the idea that we have Ishtar, and then Ishtar points to eggs and their fertility. And then, I mean, what do you have with rabbits? You know, I had a scenario when I was a kid. We had a couple of rabbits and we had them in the house, and rabbits stink. And my dad, we moved from where we were to a new home. And my dad said, when we moved, he said, I don't want those rabbits in the house anymore. He said, but we're going to have a nice big fenced backyard. We'll put the rabbits out in the fenced backyard and then just have a big cage. You know, I remember my dad saying that, just have a big cage instead of a little cage. And we were good with it. We didn't mind. We put them out back, and wild bunnies came in the yard. And because it was a bunny friendly yard, we had these giant dogs. We had not a bull mastiff. We had an English mastiff that weighed almost 200 pounds. And this dog would lay in the yard. And the bunnies we had bred with each other and with the other wild bunnies. And anyways, the whole thing ended up being, and it was funny because some people, I said this at church and some people came to me and they're like, I remember that. But we had this yard that was full of bunnies within one summer. When I say full of bunnies, Kelly, I mean, like we had hundreds of bunnies in a little quarter-acre backyard, postage stamp backyard.
Breed like rabbits.
They bred like rabbits. By the way, the English Mastiff would lay out back, and the bunnies would physically jump on the Mastiff and then jump off of it. We had a Labrador that didn't bother them. He grew up around them. So, anyways, the dogs liked the rabbits, and the neighbors did not. But whatever, they bred like rabbits. So, rabbits, fertility; eggs, fertility. You have this fertility goddess Ishtar. Look, don't you see how all these pieces linked together? It's a basket. Oh my word! It's a basket woven together with Ishtar and bunnies and eggs. So
I see their point. No, I'm just kidding. Even as you're speaking about all this, like there's no connection for me because us as Christians, we are celebrating the resurrection of our Lord. And no way, I don't care what you guys could make up something for everything that we celebrate as far as the Lord's concerned. I mean, you have the Antichrist, you know what I mean? And so you could pollute anything and that's Christianized and make it, satanic.
Yeah, for sure. I think that.
So should we just stop celebrating the birth of Christ, the resurrection of Christ, because people like to pollute?
Well, what's interesting about that is I've always said that as an argument, especially for Christmas. I'm like, for those of you who are dogging on Christmas so much, I want you to consider who you're siding with.
Yeah.
Like, are you going to side with the ACLU and say that you shouldn't have the nativity? And I remember there was an elderly woman that hated Christmas that I used to go to church with. And she would say that she was like, I don't hate Christmas. I'm like, well, I mean, you do. So like you gave me a book about how pagan Christmas was and like, shouldn't have Christmas trees and shouldn't be on December 25th and blah, blah, blah. And one of the things that these proponents would say, and she would say is, well, you shouldn't, the ancient church didn't celebrate the birth of Christ. Like it's not biblical. You can't find in the book of Acts or the book of Corinthians that it was like, oh, what was the celebration of the birth of Christ? And then, what they didn't celebrate, the early church did not celebrate the birth of Christ or celebrate the Easter as a holiday or a holy day. We didn't celebrate those in the early church. Just because, this is my stance, just because we didn't celebrate it in the early church doesn't make it wrong.
Right.
You could say, well, but what about traditions of men? But again, I don't think that when Paul was referencing traditions of men, he wasn't pointing at something that wasn't there. He wasn't warning about this future coming of, celebrating Christmas,
right.
Christ Mass. That's literally what it was. Church services being called Mass, Christ Mass. It's been shortened to Christmas.
Yep.
And so specifically to Easter, you could say, well, they didn't celebrate Easter, but that's actually not true. If that's an argument, if we're going to put that as like a fourth argument to say, so the name Ishtar and bunnies and eggs, and then, they didn't celebrate Easter in the Bible. Well, that's not true because what they did celebrate was Pascha or Passover.
Right.
And the Jews were celebrating Passover. It was their Passover celebration. And that's when Jesus died. They were all in Jerusalem for Passover. Mm-hmm. That's the reason they came up. They were going to break the legs of all the guys on the crosses. And there's a prophecy from the Old Testament that says that Jesus would never break a bone, that he'd never have a bone broken. And so, which by the way, be forewarned for those of you listening to people that you think are prophets and they prophesy that to you. I've had multiple people in my life. I don't know why this has happened. I never thought of this. Just people come to me and they're like, so-and-so prophesied over me. And they said, I'd never break a bone. And then they're like, but I haven't. I've never broke a bone. And I'm like, well, you're not dead yet. So you have a whole life ahead of you to break one. You don't know that you won't. And that's a prophecy that was given for Christ. And so the reason it was given was because when he was on the cross, the way to make it go quicker, because they're suffocating, but the person on the cross is suffocating, but they're pushing themselves up, and they can only do that for so long because they've got nails in their feet. And so as long as they can keep pushing up, they can get breath. And so what they do is they go through and they literally break their legs so that the guy can't push himself up. And then he suffocates, he asphyxiates on the cross. And so remember, Christ cried out, "It is finished," gave up the ghost. The Jews said, "Hey, we want to get this done before the Sabbath because the following day is the Sabbath."
Yep.
Which I want to speak to that in a moment too, about the 3-day thing. Those who want to argue from a Christian side and say there's a problem with Easter because of Jesus, 3 days in the grave.
But do these Christians that argue stuff like this, do they not see that they are the distraction? Like, you're causing quite the distraction on something that is used for us to glorify
The death and resurrection of Christ.
Yes.
Literally the gospel in a weekend. We could call this gospel weekend because the gospel is, Paul said in 1 Corinthians 15, he said, "I declare unto you that which I received, the gospel." And then he said this, that Christ died, that according to the scriptures, that he was buried, and that he rose again 3 days later according to the scriptures.
Right.
And that's what happened. And that's the gospel, and that's what happened. You put those two things together and you have the gospel in a weekend.
Right.
And so, but again, I mean, to be fair to the argument, I can see the concern to say, I mean, right now, if we called this weekend Baal weekend, if it was like, oh, it's Baal weekend, wouldn't you be like, oh, that's problematic? Like, why would we name it Baal? Like, that's the guy in that, if we named it some other, demon, what's the one guy with the horns, whatever. I can't think of his name. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
If we named it some other demonic thing, I would be like, well, hang on a second. So that leads me to the question then. Let's start with the name. Is the name Easter connected to Ishtar? Wesley Huff has just done a really cool, he's got an infographic out about it. He's got some short videos out about it. If you haven't seen it, look him up. Wesley Huff. I keep saying Huss because it's Wesley, but Wesley Huff. Huff.
You shared it too.
Yeah, I shared it on our Pastor Justin and Kelly page. And on that that he shared, he speaks way better than I could about the origin of that name. It's Germanic language. It's literally translation. Like, that's how we translate words. We don't say, if I was speaking Spanish, I don't say one, I say uno.
Right.
Or I don't say two, I say dos. Those are translated words.
Right.
They mean the same thing. And so Wesley Huff pointed out that Ishtar is the name of a Babylonian goddess. Yes, that is true. Easter comes from the Germanic language where they say, I think it's austere or something of that nature. I can't remember exactly how they say it, but he's pointing out, and he's correct to point out, that Easter is the translated name associated with the weekend of the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus. i.e., you can't now say, yes, but Ishtar rhymes with that. And so Ishtar is actually what they were celebrating. That would be the equal opposite equivalent of saying, well, Halloween is actually Reformation Day. And so we're going out and getting candy for Reformation Day. Well, you could claim that, but that's not why you're trick-or-treating.
Right.
One didn't have anything to do with the other. The
Right.
only thing that they have to do with each other is that their names sound sort of similar.
Right.
And to be honest with you, they're not actually even the same name. It's not like we have a goddess Easter.
Right.
It's Ishtar, and it's kind of similar to Easter. And I've said this for a long time about a lot of different things, which is, if you're going to look for evil inside of a day, you could find somebody that did something bad on some day for every day of the year.
Yeah.
For every year that's been around. You could say,
Right.
this year, on this date, on this time, so-and-so did this, so I'm not going to.
Right.
That's just not how that works. Like, you can't take away what we've been, where it started. What I'm saying is, you can go down through history and find that on Passover weekend, we've named that via Germanic language,
Yes.
Easter, and anyone who ever was speaking of Easter is speaking of this weekend, not of a Babylonian goddess, of a Babylonian fertility
Right.
goddess. So then you're left with the question, though. Okay, wait. Well, what about the eggs? What about the bunnies? What about those? Because aren't those fertility? Well, again, let's back up a second. Is fertility coming from rabbit gods?
No.
Right. So this is the day that the Lord has made.
Yeah.
And these are the creatures that the Lord has made.
Yeah.
And just because someone used a creature, say a rabbit, to symbolize in the ancient world, to say, this is our symbol of fertility, the rabbit, the hare, here's this bunny. And so we're using that. Some Babylonian person, they made a half man, half rabbit, and, said, or some Egyptian or some Roman or whoever, and said, oh, well, see, here's the fertility goddess. I mean, the Jews did that with a cow. They said, they made golden calves, said, here's the God that brought you out of, that brought you out of Egypt. And so, just because somebody did that, okay, let's use the Jewish example again. The Jews, we have this in the Bible. They came out of Egypt. They made golden calves, and they said, look, your God, behold your God. Think of what they were actually saying. They were like, look, I've made a representation of the God that brought you out of Egypt. And then they were like, oh, so that's the God that brought me out of Egypt. Now, did the cow God bring the Jews out? Of course not. Did the Jews now make cows bad? Are now cows bad because the Jews said, look, here's our God, and they worshiped golden calves? No, cows were still needed. They didn't. It wasn't like God said, stop milking cows because you guys made cow gods.
Right.
He didn't do that because the cow was not bad. The bunny is not actually a fertility god.
Yeah.
And the bunny is just a created creature that God has made.
That's right.
And so, well, where does the bunny come from? As best as we can tell, this is interesting as well. Where does the bunny come from?
Good question.
German folklore. It was nothing more than human man tradition. What I'm saying is no link to fertility whatsoever. There was an urban legend, if you will, in Germany that got brought over here when Germans migrated into America. When there was immigration into America, they brought some of their folklore, some of their urban legends with them. And so they used to tell a story. We can find stories from the 1600s, 1500s in Germany where they used to tell a story about when kids would behave, how a bunny would bury eggs for them. And it was just it was literally a story.
It was a parenting hack.
Yeah, it was, I mean, y'all, like, we use imaginative language to tell stories all the time.
Yes.
I mean, I don't think that you're doing something wrong to like Aesop's fables. He talks about the scorpion that rides on the frog's back, and the scorpion like asks the frog to go across the river, and then they go across the river, and halfway the frog's like, I can't because you'll sting me. He's like, I won't sting you. We would both die. And then they get halfway into the water, and the scorpion stings the frog, and the frog, as he's sinking, goes, why'd you do that? And he goes, because I'm a scorpion. And the moral of the story was, bad is going to be bad, even if you do something good for
That's
it.
right.
So if there's something inherently bad, it's an Aesop's fable. The tortoise and the hare, Aesop's fable.
Right.
The tortoise is going slow, but he's steady. The rabbit keeps taking breaks along the way. You know what? A tortoise and a hare didn't actually have a race. But we're not like, oh, the tortoise and the hare, that's a fertility story.
Yeah.
That's, what the tortoise and the hare is? That's a fertility story about you being patient in your journey to have children because it's a fertility story.
Right.
We don't do that.
Right.
You can't say everything that involves a rabbit has to do with fertility goddess.
Right.
And that's what I'm saying is there's history behind a bunny and eggs that has nothing to do with Ishtar.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying to you is you cannot find a link between 1600s German folklore bunny and Ishtar. They weren't linking those two things together because that's not where it came from.
Right.
And they weren't doing that. So then it leads you to the eggs. Well, then what about, are they fertility? Where did the eggs come from? Have you ever wondered that? Have you ever asked that question? Like, where'd the egg part come from?
Never. I've never asked any of this. I haven't thought, well, the Easter Bunny, where did the Easter Bunny come from?
Welcome to the pastor's life of answering all the questions that nobody ever thinks to ask until they get to church and go, wait a minute. What about, well, this one's a big one because I think that, there's a question in everyone's mind. We're about to have tomorrow at church, we're about to have an egg hunt. Is that pagan?
No.
Did we do something pagan?
No.
And so I don't think that we've done something pagan. As a matter of fact, I would give you this. There is a whole nother link behind the eggs that, again, has nothing to do with fertility. What is happening? It doesn't happen among Protestants. But remember, holidays are holy days. And they did generate from the Catholic Church.
Yeah.
And so the Catholic Church had holy days. What is happening during this time of year? Why is McDonald's selling a fish sandwich right now?
Because of
You get it in your dryer.
Lent.
Just trying to help you out.
I don't know why my mind was somewhere else. I'm not even gonna.
Yeah, I'm with you. You were like, oh, McDonald's does have fish sandwiches. Why did they put cheese on?
Well, then I got to thinking
place
about.
that puts cheese on a fish sandwich.
Do they really?
Yeah, grossly. Like, you don't put cheese and fish together unless
I
you're
mean,
at
I
McDonald's.
don't think that would necessarily be bad.
Oh, I don't.
Interesting.
I don't think it sounds good.
Would you eat cheese on a chicken sandwich?
Yes.
Why? Why chicken and not fish?
I feel like you're pointing out my fish bigotry.
I'm just saying. I think you might like it. I've never had it, and I don't know. But I think cheese.
I've had
adds to
a
everything.
McDonald's fish sandwich with cheese on. I question if it's real fish. So
Is it good? I mean, I've grown up saying I hate fish and
it's
never trying.
Do you
it.
like fish sticks?
Yes.
It's a big fish stick on a bun.
All right, I'm gonna have to try it sometime.
You're not missing anything, honey. There's better fish.
That's true.
There's better fish besides McDonald's.
It's true, but I feel like this whole new world has opened up to me with fish. But fried.
Yeah. I'd rather have a piece of tuna or
Yes, any day.
something good. Anyways, we got off track here.
Yeah, we did.
Okay,
Lent.
During Lent, a lot of people are giving up animal products. When that happens, then what happens with chickens? Are they like, oh, it's Lent, we're going to stop laying eggs?
Right.
Chickens are still laying eggs,
Yeah.
but the Catholic Church was not buying and eating eggs. And so traditionally, we have this tradition that says that as you're coming to the end of Passover, as you come to the end of Easter, come to the end of Lent, that you have an abundance of eggs. And so they decorated the eggs, painted the eggs, and hid the eggs to turn them into a game, so that there was like this game to have the kids go get the eggs, and then you have this abundance of eggs and people eat the eggs. It was a way to sell and eat eggs at a time when egg production was still happening, but the sale and purchase of eggs
Makes sense.
was light. And so to sell those and to get those, there's, decorating it was a marketing, if anything else, to say we're going to market the eggs. Again, my point there, if you want to argue like traditions of men, should we have any part of that, whatever, I mean, fine, you can argue that if you want, but my point would be not pagan. It's not pagan. And do I think that you could say that it's cultural? And, could you say, oh, we'll leave the cultural thing to the culture and let's focus on Christ? I think you can absolutely say that with one exception. Kids are still kids.
Yeah.
And I think that kids enjoying an Easter egg hunt, and like at our church, we're going to have our kids come out for an egg hunt. They're going to do this giant egg hunt. I think they've got something like 6,000 eggs that the kids are going to go out and go find these eggs and put them in their little baskets, and they're going to have fun. And then we're going to sit everybody down and we're going to have a whole devotional time, and we're going to tell them the story of Christ. And so you did have a means of bringing a bunch of kids together. Now, I think there's a danger if you're like, oh yeah, I went to church this weekend and you went to the egg hunt.
Right.
You probably missed the point.
Right.
You probably missed the whole of it. But again, not pagan. There's no link between painted eggs. And I've been saying this one for years. I'm like, show me the ancient whoever that painted eggs. And somebody came to me with like some Chinese stuff and like, well, the Chinese did this with eggs. And I'm like, see, again, you're saying that somebody did something with eggs.
Right.
Like, I have steak knives in my house, like I know that people have used knives to do bad things. Can I not use a steak knife to cut my steak or my chicken?
Some liberals.
Well, that's where chopsticks came from.
Really?
Yeah, whoever it was a Buddha, or whoever was like, oh, like knives are like a weapon of war, so they used sticks to. But I'm like, you still got to cut it somewhere. Okay. Somebody's got to cut it in the kitchen. You're either going to pre-cut it and cook it so I can eat it with sticks, or you're going to leave it whole and I'm going to cut it myself on the plate. But I guess I do.
And someone had to use something to sharpen.
Yeah, somewhere somebody had to do something with it, and they didn't do something pagan by using a knife to cut chicken. In the same way, you're not doing something pagan to use eggs to market eggs or sell eggs or whatever. So my question at the beginning of this was, is Easter pagan?
No.
And the answer is no. Easter is not, in and of itself, Easter is not pagan. Could you say that somebody's done something bad on this day? Sure. Could you say that there's a goddess that rhymes with Easter? Sort of, if you want. Could you say that, has somebody pointed out and said, oh, fertility eggs, fertility gods and eggs or whatever? I mean, you could, but again, rabbits are not evil. Eggs are not evil. They are not pagan in and of themselves. And Paul kind of goes over this. Paul's talking in the Bible was like, listen, as far as like to eat meat that's been sacrificed to idols or not, I mean, at the end of the day, there is no God. Like there is a God, there's one God, but these gods, there's none of them. That God's not real. Right. So, somebody had a ritual to a God that doesn't really exist. So no, it's not a big deal for you to eat meat sacrificed to idols. Now he does say if it's going to cause your brother to stumble, then don't do that.
Right.
But now, so that leads me to kind of what I would say is like my wrap up point of the whole thing. And if you'd like, we can jump back into the 3-day thing, because that's always a question, Jesus in the
I do have one question for you when you're done wrapping up this.
Oh, don't hit me with it now.
Okay, so a lot of people, Christians and the like, are asking, why is it named Good Friday if Jesus died on the cross?
Oh,
and endured what he endured. So maybe you could answer that for everybody. That I think it's a question on a lot of people's minds. So
yeah, and it's a legitimate question, but it's just you're just looking at it from the wrong side,
right?
If you're looking at the death of Christ and you're seeing the death of Christ as a bad thing, I understand it's a hard thing, but it's certainly not a bad thing,
right?
As a matter of fact, here's how good it is. Isaiah said, the prophet, 700 years before Christ would ever come, Isaiah said, it pleased the Father to bruise him. And that has always bothered people. The first time I read it, I'm like, ow, man, that stings to hear that. That feels harsh to say it pleased the Father to bruise him. But why did it please the Father to bruise him? Why is it Good Friday? Because he's saving us.
Right.
The punishment that is supposed to be mine and the punishment that is supposed to be yours is taken on. I want to try to say it in this way. It's taken on by the only one who can actually handle it. So instead of God saying my wrath to be poured out on you, which would cause you to be separated from God for all of eternity, God says, no, instead of that being what we're going to do, I'm going to pour my wrath out on my son who is God, one with me, and he is sinless. He is the sinless, perfect, spotless Lamb. So when Jesus dies for your sin, he fully died. He took on the wrath of God. It was not simply the crucifixion. The crucifixion was gruesome.
Right.
But that was not the hardest part.
Right.
Carrying the cross was not the hardest part. Being punched, kicked, having his skin tore off, none of that was the hardest part. It was graphic and hard and gruesome. But the hardest part was when Jesus was on the cross and he cried out and said, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani. My God, why have you forsaken me? Because death is separation. You and I know that firsthand. Death is separation. What is hell actually described as in the Bible?
It's without God.
Eternal separation.
Yeah.
Separation from what? Life. Peace. Everything that God is, hell is named as the opposite. The Bible says that God is light and in him is no darkness at all, right? But then what's it say about hell? It's outer darkness. And in the new heaven and new earth, there is no sun because there's no need for a sun because the Son of God, Jesus, is there. God is there in the city and he is the light thereof. He's the light of the city. In Christ, he tells us in Revelation in the new heaven, doesn't he say that he'll wipe away every tear? There will be no more crying, no more pain, right?
Yeah.
But what's he say about hell? It's outer darkness where there's weeping and gnashing of teeth. In heaven, With God, in the presence of God, peace. Every tear wiped away. No more pain. In hell, darkness, pain, gnashing of teeth, weeping. All of the opposite of what God is. Hell is being eternally separated from God. What we don't seem to understand is that God, everything that comes from God, God says this, every good and perfect gift comes down from the Father. Jesus said that God makes the sun to shine on the just and the unjust. So the goodness of God, the sun shining, which gives us vitamin D, which tans our skin, warms us, has a whole lot of healing properties, that comes from God. The wind that blows and brings the cool breeze, that comes from God. Every good gift, every perfect gift is coming from God. Everything that is not good and is not perfect is coming from the enemy. And so separation from God, that is hell. Think of this for a moment. Jesus cries out on the cross, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani, my God, why have you forsaken me? Jesus took on our separation. But he's the sinless Son of God, the only begotten. So he can take it, literally is the only one who can take it and conquer it. Many men have died. Many men have died for other men. Like soldiers have died for their country. Soldiers have died for a cause. How come their death doesn't count for you?
Right.
Why doesn't God say, well, all of these soldiers died for America, so Kelly, you're saved because these soldiers died?
Right.
Because those soldiers in death, all they could die for is themselves.
Right.
It's appointed unto man to die once. Well, Jesus became man, but he's also fully God, and he died for our sins. So here's my point. You're asking about Good Friday, and I'm circling back to that to say, is the death of Jesus hard and gruesome and graphic? Yes. And if you look at it from that side, that you're like, how hard it was, how could that be good? But that's not the point that God's getting at. What's good is that God took us who are separated from him, and he brought us unto himself. The death of Jesus is good for us.
Right.
It is good for us to say that Jesus died. And remember that what was said of Jesus. Here's an interesting line from the Bible. For the joy that was set before him, he endured the cross. The joy that was set before him, he endured the cross. Was the cross joy? No. But what came from the cross? Our forgiveness. We don't have to be separated from God. We are eternally joined to God because we've been forgiven for our sins. How are we forgiven for our sins? Because Christ died on the cross so that we could come to the Father and don't have to be separated from him. Hence, we have Good Friday. It's not, it's weird because we have Black Fridays, we think of shopping, but in a sense of like, in a theological sense, we don't call it Black Friday.
Right.
Because that implication would mean it's bad.
Yeah.
But it's not bad. It's good. It's not just like it's necessary, but it's bad. No, it's good that Christ died for us. It's good. Jesus even said that. Remember when he was saying he was going to go away, and his disciples are like, "Oh, we would never want you to go. Where are you going? We want to go with you." And Jesus said, "It's good for you that I go. It's good for you that I go, because if I go, I'll send the Comforter. I'll send the Holy Spirit to you." So Christ died for you. He's forgiven you. He's ascended to the Father, and he's given us the Holy Spirit, and he has called all of this good. Not good because what he endured on the cross was easy, but good because what he did on the cross was save us.
Yeah.
There's your Good Friday.
I love it.
We have Easter. It's just the Germanic way of saying, it's the Germanic way of talking about this weekend, the death and burial and resurrection of, I shouldn't say Germanic, it's the Germanic language reference of this day. Other countries have different names for this weekend, and they don't say Easter. They don't use that name.
Right.
The bunny is German folklore, which kind of goes with the Germanic language that brought it over.
Yeah.
And then eggs. Yes, the German folklore, bunnies buried eggs, so there is that side of it. But you also have the Lent side of it, the Catholic Church that had an abundance of. And by the way, that was the main church in the world for a long time. Until the Protestant Reformation, you had the Catholic Church. If anybody was of faith, they went to the Catholic Church, even if they disagreed with it.
Yeah.
And so Yeah. So my wrap up for this whole thing is to say we have a weekend where we get to share the gospel of Christ openly. There is no one that would argue. What I'm saying to you is this: if you were to go, imagine that you were to go to someone in the community and say, "What is," somebody that doesn't go to church, and you would say, "What's Easter about?" What are they probably going to tell you? I'm not a church going person, but it has to do something with, they might say Easter bunny or whatever, but if you're like, no, but where'd it come from? They would not say a Babylonian goddess.
Right. Right.
If you pin somebody down, you're like, no, not Easter bunnies, not eggs. Where did it come from? Like, what are people doing? What's the holiday about?
Right.
But this person's not a Christian. They could probably look at you and say, it's a Christian thing. It's a church thing. It's what Christians do, something about their Messiah or something about Jesus.
Right.
They probably, to be honest with you, I'm probably not giving enough credit there. I would dare to say most non-believing people, atheists, agnostics, whatever, adults could probably look at you and say, Easter is about the resurrection of Jesus.
Yeah, definitely.
That's what they're celebrating when they're celebrating Easter. That's where it came from. Hence my point. If you were to go without this little argumentation happening, and you were to say to an atheist or an agnostic person, a non-believing person, and you were to say, what's Easter about? They're not going to be like, well, it's actually about the Babylonian goddess Ishtar.
Right.
Unless they've just been watching the short videos that y'all like to send me.
Right.
So, okay. So Easter, pagan? No, not pagan.
Far from it.
And I would say, friends, enjoy a weekend to remember Christ.
That's right.
You know what Jesus said there at that Passover meal before he went to the cross? What did he say? He said, do this in remembrance of me until I come.
That's right.
And so, if anything, I would say that celebrating a day that remembers his death and his resurrection is fulfilling what he told us there at the Lord's Supper to say, this do in remembrance of me.
Yes.
No, eggs don't remember him. I just see them as neutral. Like that, I guess that's my point is, I don't see playing a board game as bad.
Right.
I don't see those things as bad. I just say it's neutral. It's a neutral thing. If somebody wants to play a board game or not play a board game, if somebody wants to play the game of hiding eggs or not hiding eggs, it's a game.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with it. It's neutral. And so if your whole stance is like, well, we shouldn't even have that. I mean, you could try to take that if you want. I started to say this earlier. Try to say that if you want, but it's if you're going to take out the fact that you do have kids involved.
Right.
I understand as adults, you could be like, well, why do we do that? But sometimes it's good to let kids use their imagination and meet a child where they are and do something for a child. I'm not personally going to go out and have an Easter egg hunt.
Right.
Although that could be a whole marketing idea. Adult Easter egg hunt.
Oh, goodness.
You hide bigger gifts, but the eggs are way harder to find.
Yeah.
You put
money.
Yeah, you put money in an egg and then you hide it and you put
gift cards.
Yeah, and then you like
to Salt and Light Thrift. Do you like what I did there?
I do like what you did there. Okay, y'all, is Easter pagan? No, it is not, according to Pastor Justin and Kelly.
That's right.
Easter is not pagan. We'd love to hear from you all. Not argue. We're not here to argue. If you want to get into that, we're probably going to not.
We're going to shut that down.
We're going to shut that down.
Yeah.
We're here being positive. And I hope y'all heard our tone. Like, I'm not trying to mock.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to mock somebody who thinks that. They don't line up. The two things do not line up. Paganism and Easter do not line up. Easter is about the resurrection. Zoom out.
That's right.
Easter is about the resurrection of Jesus Christ.
That's right.
what the weekend is about. And the name just happens to rhyme
Yes.
with,
And don't
Easter.
find yourself being a distraction. We have enough of that.
That's right. All right. We hope you guys have enjoyed our Easter special podcast here on The Whole Truth. See y'all next time. Do it. Hit it. You broke it. Hit it again.